Hey guys and girls, on this video I will be talking about the 7th episode of the new Perry Mason. It is called Chapter 7, so one more to go after this. It's the finale, which will be up later in the week, and it has been renewed, of course, as I said on one of the previous reviews. So Perry Mason, the HBO version, will be getting a second season, so interesting to see where they go next year with this. This is another really solid episode, I think. The flashback is quite interesting at the start and very unsettling, actually. Even without seeing anything, it's just what it suggests is kind of upsetting, because it starts off with a young sister Alice when she was a kid. I think either a pre-teen or maybe early teens, but certainly very young. And she's there with the mother, played by Lily Taylor. And they're stranded basically in the desert. They need a lift, so this man comes along, this like richer man. And obviously this scene is meant to kind of show you then they came from nothing in a way. They came from a poor background. So this man, who clearly has money, picks them up, and we soon find out that he is religious. And we soon find out, because at first he plays it all innocent and all gallant, like he's happy to help them. And then because Sister Alice, or I should stop saying Sister Alice, because this is during the younger years, but Alice is like off in the background, just sort of playing, and the mother is talking to this guy. And he says, "Oh, I'll be happy to help you for just a small price or something. I won't ask for much at all." And then he kind of motions to to Alice. And that's when the mother talks to her and says, "Well, you know, this kind gentleman is willing to help us if you just," and I can't remember what the phrase is, but it's very suggestive, and it's really creepy, because she walks over towards him, and I think we're definitely, now I guess they don't make it clear if he actually intends anything like sexual with her, so if it is like actual like paedophilia, but at the very least it maybe says that he wants to have ownership of her, and that's kind of the context of the scene. So that bit's very unsavory. I wasn't quite sure if it was meant to be anything like sexual. It might have been my mind racing to that, just because, you know, quite a cynical world and all that, and it just seemed to be a reading on that, the way this guy was quite creepy, and you had that suggestive sort of like tone, but it could just be that he wanted to own her, sort of thing, or have some sort of power over her. But it's definitely successful in as it sort of shows that maybe Sister Alice could have been a normal girl if it wasn't for this sort of like chance encounter. She could have been out of this sort of way of life. Now obviously in the present day, in the story it's been telling, it does show her as quite a manipulative sort of figure herself. Like, she does have obviously a fair bit of power. She's a very divisive figure, but I guess this is just showing how things kind of led to this, how she got into this sort of way of life. And I think it's also showing that her mother, has maybe had that sort of influence, that she has that power, and kind of every time maybe Alice has not been so keen, wanted to pull away or something, the mother has kind of goaded her into that and kind of forced her hand. Because obviously it's like painting a picture of how when you don't have a lot of money and you're quite desperate, then the richer people unfortunately tend to exploit that, or sometimes anyway. But that's kind of the setup for the episode. And we obviously get a bit more with Alice in this episode. It's like a big set piece, because Alice, this is the episode where she's supposedly going to perform this miracle where she will bring baby Charlie back to life. And the whole message and the whole like planning for this is dealt a blow before we even get to that, because she's confronted with one of these he's one of like the protesters. I'm not sure if he's like part of like a church or something, but he's one of the people who have been very kind of anti-Sister Alice anyway. And he brings in the guy who in the previous episode we saw Alice stage this like sort of fake miracle type thing, the guy in the wheelchair. And they basically prove that her thing didn't work. Then he's still in a wheelchair, that he still has a bad leg, and that the whole deal was then he only like had a brief sort of respite from it. Now that's kind of twisted anyway, because I guess the point of the whole performance is that he never needed a miracle. It was just sort of staged that way. But it's a whole, Alice is showing up in public and the pressure's on her then to perform this miracle to kind of turn around public opinion about her. So we once again get this like frantic scene of like press coverage and kind of for Alice, against Alice, like voters and supporters. The media frenzy is kind of insane, because things really intensify with Emily as well, who's around, and we get, it's a really well put together scene as we get like this massive crowd, and I think they really play it up. It really turns into like this melodramatic kind of really full-blooded type scene where people are like getting into like fisticuffs and stuff. But this is around the thing. So they go to the grave, and there's nobody in there. Like literally nobody. It's not even that she hasn't risen Charlie. It's the fact that his body doesn't seem to be there anymore, which is a bit suspicious, because at the very least the body should be there. So it appears as though it hasn't worked. The miracle hasn't worked. So everyone starts having a go, starts slamming Sister Alice, and the episode ends with this sort of twist where they go on, because as I said, there's this mad sort of scramble. Perry Mason and Della are there as well, and they're part of like the fracas. But they go on further down the road and they kind of escape from the press and from various people. And then there's suddenly a baby in the middle of the road. So they stop the car, this being like Sister Alice and the mother of the car that they're in. And the mother goes up to the baby and says, "It's Charlie, he's there, he's been brought back." And she starts going into like this hysterical, like religious type speak, like, "Oh, don't you see, it's like a miracle child," or something like that. And Alice, her face is like really surprised. I don't know what to make of it. Like, is she really in on this, whatever is going on? It was hard to gauge her reaction, but like, as the mother is like proclaiming this miracle, Alice like just starts running, sort of thing. So it's hard to like read her reaction. Her reaction did seem kind of surprised, so I'm guessing maybe she wasn't in on this plan. But anyway, it obviously leaves this big sort of cliffhanger, because if this is baby Charlie, that does change things. But it leaves you with two possibilities, because obviously we know it's not really a miracle. So the one possibility is he never really died in the first place, and there's some, dodgy stuff going on, and his death was kind of like covered up, or well, is they made a fake death basically, which I guess we'll find out the reasons behind that. The other possibility, of course, is it's not baby Charlie, it's another baby, which I guess they can find that out at some point in any case. But those are the two possibilities. So quite an interesting ending to the episode. I think the one thing you're pretty sure of is that Emily's innocent, at least of that. But so in other stuff, Perry Mason goes to this guy Hicks, who used to work for the church. He used to be like an accountant or have some sort of connection. Well, he didn't work for them, but he owned the land which they now own, which, like, there was this business, like this private business, which they were investigating in the last episode, which Baggerty like brought all these years ago. And it's kind of, now it belongs to Mr. Hicks, but it was like bizarrely sold on to him by Baggerty, and he just knows about some of the church's dodgy dealings. He goes to bat for Sister Alice. He does actually say, "I won't say a bad thing about her," but he does have like some damning like evidence or testimony against the church. And the sort of spotlight falls on like the accountant of the church, like their books, because it appears as though the church were in financial ruin, and that they needed a sizable investment to keep them afloat. So Baggerty's up on the stand, which is another well done scene, quite dramatic. Obviously Robert Patrick, good casting for Baggerty. He's up on the stand and he's being questioned about them asking for this money, and at one point they asked the bank for this loan, and it's like thousands of dollars, and it was turned down. But then coincidentally, days later, you had the baby Charlie incident, and the ransom amount happened to be the same amount of money that the church required and that they didn't get from the bank. So that definitely shines suspicion on Church, because obviously you've got the George link, and he was like having an affair with Emily. So that's all very interesting stuff, and they're getting closer to something here. The other big thing in the episode is that, well, first of all, Peter quits as private detective because he's just getting really fed up with Perry Mason at this point, because Mason has had quite a few mood swings, and so he quits. And so then Drake steps into his role. Drake takes over and starts investigating things. So I like that, because I quite like Drake, and it gives him further involvement, some more meaty things to do. So he asks around, and he finds out that I think it was Ellis, and also, sorry, I should go back. I need to deal with the accountant, because what happens is the accountant's dodging them, that being Mason and his legal team, because they know then he'll have to give testimony, or he'll be called to the stand if they get a hold of him. So he's trying to dodge that. So Ellis actually catches up with him, and Ellis kills him to stop him from obviously testifying and potentially testifying against the Church. And obviously Ellis has a link to it as well, so he eliminates that problem. So that's that side. But as I said, Drake finds out that Ellis and I think it was either Baggerty or the accountant, I can't remember which, stayed at this motel on dates that were close to the crime taking place. And they also find out, because again it sort of deals with this kind of casual sort of racism, where the woman at the motel isn't really willing to talk to Drake, really because of his cover. She kind of phrases it in a different way, but the tone is very much there. But then one of the maids approaches him as he leaves, and she has the information. She gives it to him, saying, yeah, there were two gentlemen there, and we also heard a baby, which obviously could be baby Charlie, a baby crying, and they couldn't get him to stop. But then they called in someone from the outside, a woman, to look after him, and it's suggested that the woman was in fact a prostitute. Now we know that there's a whorehouse which Ellis regularly goes to, and which is kind of linked to him and a couple of other characters. And actually this leads to the comedy highlight of the episode, because Mason goes to the whorehouse to investigate, to try and, because there's one particular woman who they know is linked to Ellis there. So they get a description from the maid, and it's an Asian type woman. So Ellis Mason tries to find him, or her. So they start talking, and this is just brilliant, because when they're waiting, and they're kind of given different positions on like this book sort of thing, like this catalogue. It almost like looks like a really cartoonish version of the Kama Sutra, but it's just so descriptive with the. You have to watch the clip from the episode to appreciate it, but it's absolutely hilarious. And Mason's very kind of deadpan reaction is just brilliant. But yeah. Yeah, that bit had me in stitches. It was so good. So funny. Yeah. Just really explicit sexual positions. But it just looks so funny. So good. But yeah, he does get to see this woman, obviously under the guise of being a customer, and he's trying to get somewhere with her, and I think she does start to talk, but it's certainly hinting that they could have been looking after the baby so that they had baby Charlie there. But he gets interrupted because they obviously eventually cottoned on to what's going on, and Mason gets like roughed up by these like group of gangsters or something, and he gets thrown out, and they're about to kill him, but Drake comes and rescues him. So he has a near escape there. But so the case is kind of heating up as we come to the final episode. One other bit with Mason, which I'll just mention, is that his girlfriend, or I guess on-off girlfriend, is more of a casual, like, sexual relationship, but we've seen her in a few episodes. She screws him in a different way this episode, because she buys like his land off him, buys his house off him, or takes ownership without him like realizing, without him giving consent. And because she really likes flying aeroplanes, so she says she's going to turn it into a land, like an airstrip sort of thing. And Mason is just taken back by this. He didn't see it coming at all, so he's definitely pissed. I'm not quite sure what relevance it has to what's going on. I mean, obviously it's very personal to Mason because of his background, and his father, I think, owned it, but I guess it shows a different side to her, just than they've been having this casual relationship. But at the same time, she has bonded with him, or they seem to have bonded, and she's been quite supportive. But yeah, it's one of these things where maybe it's just showing that in this sort of world, you can't really trust anyone, or just then they've had this relationship that has been always based on, I guess, sex and physical attraction. So I guess maybe it's showing that Mason was a little bit naive to trust her. Then yeah, ultimately you can get burnt when it's just a physical relationship. But yeah, that's just another side sort of note. I'm not sure if they're going to come back to that or not in the last episode. But yeah, that's Perry Mason, episode 7 of the first season. So the finale is airing this week. It's airing actually about now. It's on in the UK tomorrow night, so I will get on that. I'll watch it tomorrow night, and I'll probably review it tomorrow night as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below for this episode. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. And thanks for listening. Goodbye.